Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our study. Now, in this lecture, we'll talk about wages. Now, when speaking of wealth distribution, which is the main topic of last lecture, one important form of wealth is wage. So, wage must be fair, and the way to achieve fairness is through paying wages in accordance to contribution of the worker. So the concept of wage in traditional Chinese culture is closely related to pay for performance, which is also used very widely in modern corporate governance management. However, in traditional Chinese culture, the wage system is discussed under the setting of national economy instead of a company or on a company basis. It considers the contribution of all occupation categories. Therefore, there is a theoretical wage benchmark for each occupation category based on the theoretical contribution made by the workers in each category. A parallel concept about wage system is called the Principle of Substitution. Now, generally speaking, the Principle of Substitution is very similar to the concept of opportunity cost in modern economics. So we'll start with this principle and explain the wage system of ancient China. Okay. So imagine someone owns a farm, okay? And he or she works on his own farm as a farmer or a peasant. So in this case, he would live off his own produce and possibly sell the leftover. Okay, so this is the scenario. Now, in this scenario, he receives no wage from anybody. So he's not a wage earner and he can support himself on his own farm. So where does wage come from? Well, wage only arises when this man works for other people. But he's not a slave, because slave doesn't get paid for his work. So, precisely speaking, wage would only arise when there are free labors. Okay? Now, our imaginary peasant can support himself on his own farm. So, under what circumstance would he ever work for someone else then? Maybe on somebody else's farm, or take a different job, office job perhaps. So what is the motivation that makes him leave his farm and get a paid job? So ignoring the possibility that he just simply doesn't like working on his own farm anymore, so that's a change of taste. So ignoring that possibility, or other possibility that he has to relocate his home, let's just focus on the financial reason. The only reason that he would work for someone else in either private employment or public office is that he would receive a return that is at least equal to what he could have earned on his farm. Otherwise, he would have no incentive to abandon his farm. Okay, so our little story explains the origin of wages. Now, let's have a look at the formal definition of the wage system. It's explained in the chapter of royal regulation in the Book of Rights. It says, the officers of the lowest grade in a feudal state had an emolument equal to that of husbandmen whose fields were of the highest quality, equal to what they would have made by tilling the fields. So clearly, this is the wage concept of substitution, and more specifically, it is the substitute of tillage. So working on the field, basically, right? And this has been discussed extensively by both Confucius and Mencius. So in traditional Chinese culture, and in all of the official reports, wage and salaries are viewed as an alternative compensation of working on the farmland. So you either, work as a peasant, or you don't work as a peasant, but as someone else, and you receive a wage. So this can be understood clearly if we look at the actual measurement of wage and salary in Chinese language. The word, the second character from the top, okay, the second character is grain. Okay, that's for the word grain. And in ancient China, the measure of grain is the third character. Okay, it's pronounced dan. Okay, and the word for wage and salary is the first one. All right. So when people talked about how much an officer get paid, they always refer to the number of dan, which is the measure for grain, which is the third one. So wage and salary really is a function of the amount of grain, as you can see in the in the equation. Now, in ancient China, official salary was paid in terms of grain. So under the ancient Chinese wage system, if the farmer, no longer works as a farmer on his own field, but choose to work for somebody else instead, right, to receive a wage, then this wage is in the form of grain, and it is a substitute for tillage, i.e. working on the farm. There's a very simple idea, but there is a deeper meaning about the substitution system of wage. In traditional Chinese culture, every working man is regarded as labor. As we said before, the four people, they're all laborers. Okay, whether he works on a farm or in the office, because their salaries and wages could all be measured as substitute for tillage. Now, of course, he doesn't have to work for the public office, right? He could choose to become an artisan or work for private enterprises. But the concept still applies. This is because all the working output and production are calculated as an equivalence to farming output, so that all salaries are a substitute for tillage.